Hey beer lovers, and welcome to another beer log. Now, you may or may not know that we have launched a podcast called The Bubble, and you may or may not notice that this isn't Brad sat next to me. So I thought we should talk about Rob.
You drafted me in because Brad obviously has a face for the telly.
Whereas I have a face for radio.
And I've got the face for radio. Yeah. And the soothing Irish accent that, if you can understand me...
Most people think he's Scottish, mate.
Yeah.
So Rob and I used to work together and have a mutual respect for certain podcasts, namely Adam Buxton's.
Hence the jingles. That was my brief from Johnny, that I was allowed to come on the podcast if I made jingles, which hopefully some of you have heard. And if you haven't, you should check the podcast out and hear some of my slightly unusual jingles.
Yeah, come for the jingles, stay for the chat.
The chat.
So the concept behind the podcast is, we wanted to escape the bubble of craft beer just a little bit, because we can get very insular, and certainly on the Craft Beer channel, it's all we talk about. So the idea of the bubble is to talk about things on the fringes, or talk about things completely alien to beer, and more importantly, talk to people who are completely alien to beer, who have almost nothing to do with it, and get their perspective.
Like it grew out of maybe a slight frustration with, although there's a lot of good beer podcasts out there, they were maybe a bit intense, a bit long, and we wanted something that just approached it from a different angle.
So talking of chat, we're on to episode 5. That episode went live today, and the link is in the descriptions box below to all of the episodes that are on Spotify, iTunes, and thecraftbeerchannel.com. And that episode was a very interesting episode in which I chatted to the director for Wales at Alcohol Change UK.
You were actually riding solo on that one, so you won't hear my Irish/Scottish accent.
We get you in the intro,
yeah.
And then you leave me to battle with the evil axis.
But other than that, I do feature on all the other episodes. So the first one, we kicked off the podcast with... can't even remember.
Sellouts. Yeah, so we spoke to a financial journalist about the process and the impetus behind big sales of companies to even bigger
companies.
Which
was very fitting, because it was sort of around the time of two very big sales in the industry, with Beavertown and Fourpier, and then even more relevant now with one of the biggest sales in UK brewing history.
Yeah, with Fuller's. So I wish we'd known that, particularly because our guest was a real ale drinker, and that's how we came across him. So I'm sure he'd have had some pretty mixed emotions on that, because he was pretty pro sales, except when he loved the company. And then we did food and beer, which was actually my favourite episode, because it completely changed our perceptions, which is what we wanted. So we thought we'd get a beer lover who owned a restaurant, and he'd come in and go, beer and food matching is great. He came on the podcast and said, don't do it.
Go to a restaurant if you want to eat nice food, and go to a bar if you want to drink nice beer.
Yeah. So that was,
okay.
Yeah, there's some silences and some musing on our part, certainly in the outro.
He still has pretty good beer in his restaurant.
Yeah, he still does, yeah. So that was with the MasterChef winner, Tim, who owns Nanban down in Brixton.
And then episode 3, we went dry. And we did Soda, Robin from Square Root, which was more than just us asking her what Dr. Pepper was.
Yeah, I promise. But you do find out what Dr. Pepper was, and what root beer is, and probably several other soft drinks we've forgotten. And that was an interesting chat just about how similar and how different those two worlds are. Like, craft soda has lots of processes in common, but it's a very different sales and a very different marketing perspective you have to take.
Soda Wars was, I believe, the phrase we coined.
Yeah. And then we chat to Andrew Mizzle of Alcohol Change, and then the next episode, coming in a couple of months, in 1 month, is a chat with Evan O'Riordan of Colonel, which I know doesn't sound like we're getting outside the bubble, but we talk about cheese. A lot about cheese. An hour and 20 minutes of cheese.
Of cheesy goodness.
Yeah. And we're not talking about what you listen to in a club. We're talking about the smelly stuff.
Real Lancashire cheddar. We've got some Stinky Blue.
Rob's moving to Lancashire to find Miss Kirkham and that particular cheese we tried and loved.
We find out about how difficult upscaling cheese is and why cheddar took over the world.
And it's a bit like lager, the story. Yeah. There's so many similarities. It's a really interesting perspective on both beer and on cheese and just artisan production in general.
Cheddar is lager and cheese is lambic.
Exactly.
That's sort of what we discovered.
Fat men are lambic, I thought. That's what we concluded at the end. So it's a lot of fun. It's also very serious, but also not all about beer. So we're hoping to bring in some new people. So if you've got friends who love cheese, selling out, food, sodas, do ask them to give it a listen and let us know what you think. And if you've got any ideas for it, do drop us a message. But otherwise, you'll continue to see Brad's face on the channel. You'll hear Rob's Scottish voice on the podcast, and tragically, me in both.
All the time.
All the time. All Johnny, all the time. Cheers, guys. See you soon.